Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Bible Study. We are glad that you're able to join us, whether you're watching it live now or you'll watch this later. I'm recording this just a little bit later because I didn't get my nap today, and quite frankly, I'm tired and probably won't be long to bed. So I thought we'd just drop in here early to get Bible study going. And like I say, you don't have to watch it now. If you're busy, come back and watch it later. But we are going through the book, No More Excuses. And this is what we're reading out of and studying right now. And this is Dr. Tony Evans. I want to say thank you to Don and Janet Powell. They gave me a devotional from their trip to Myrtle Beach this week to the Spring Jubilee. And they give me a year-long devotional that they bought for me that Dr. Johnny Hunt put together. And I actually got him to sign it for me before they left there. And I certainly do appreciate that. I'm a big fan of Johnny Hunt. And it was nice to have that. And I opened it up, and it had a little note in there to Pastor Kevin from Johnny Hunt. So that meant a whole lot. And hope everybody enjoyed the day. If you were able to join us at the sanctuary for Mother's Day, I thought we had a really good service this morning. Or if you didn't watch today, or you weren't there in person, go back and check out the sermon today, the message and the singing. It's on my Facebook page. It's on the Beaver Baptist Facebook page. The video is there from today's message. So I appreciate everybody coming out. I want to thank you, moms, for all you do. As we recognize you. I know what we done wasn't a whole lot, but I don't know that we could give you the whole world and probably wouldn't be enough to say thank you for all the things that you do. But we hope in some small way you understand that we love you and we appreciate all that you do for us. And the church certainly recognizes you and wants you to know that without you, the modern day church would not be able to do what it's doing, because women are truly the backbone of the modern day church. They really step up and meet needs, and so we're thankful for that. And again, I hope you just enjoyed yourself. It's always nice when our young people participate, and Easton's mom and dad were a little bit worried that somebody might get upset about him wanting to pray for his dog, but I think you train them young that there's nothing too big or too small. And so, we prayed with that young man, and I pray that as he grows up, he'll grow in the faith, and God will be a priority in his life. And so tonight I want to talk a little. We've been talking about Joseph in regards to Joseph being sold into slavery, and the things that Joseph had to go through, and how he kept going. That he didn't use his circumstance as an excuse to give up, to cave in, and to quit. At every corner, Joseph was done wrong. By no fault of his own, he finds himself in these places. And, it's because, to start with, that his daddy loved him. His brothers got jealous. They sold him into slavery. They first want to kill him. But Reuben says, listen, let's not kill him and have his blood on our hands. Let's throw him in this cistern, and let's wait for some people to come by, and we'll sell him and make a little money off of him. Then we'll go back and tell our father that this wild animal ate our brother, killed him, and ate him up. And so at every corner in life, Joseph finds that bad things are happening. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand about life, is that bad things happen to good people just as well as bad things happen to bad people. It's what we have in common, is bad things happen as long as we live here on this planet. Part of it is not God throwing stuff on you because you've done something bad. We know that's not the case. We know that God allows things to happen. If we look at the life of Job, if you remember the story of Job, at the beginning of that, Satan was looking for somebody to wreak havoc on, and God basically just says, hey, There's Job, have at him. He won't give up and he won't quit, no matter how much you throw at him. So God doesn't cause, he allows. Why we have bad things happen here is because if we go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, when Adam and Eve fell, creation fell with it. And so everything fell. They fell into sin, creation become decayed. It just become one of those things that now we live on a planet that is full of decaying bad things. And so Joseph finds himself in that. And I want to encourage you, now listen, if you're not going through something now, you will be at some point in your life. And at those points, you have to make a quick decision. You got to make one pretty quick. You got to decide that whether or not you're going to continue to serve God and hang on, or if you're just going to give up and throw up your hands in the air and quit. And you got to make that one pretty quick, because if you don't make it in the beginning that, you know what, I'm not quitting, I'm not giving up. Sometimes when these things start happening, they snowball, do they not? They start more and more, and then when one shoe falls, then the other, and then, so you have to know who you serve and why you serve Him, and you need to know, that I'm going to serve Him no matter what comes my way, no matter what happens, how difficult it might be. I'm going to keep my focus on Jesus, the author and the finisher of my faith. I'm going to trust Him, and I'm going to continue to move forward. It would be reasonable, if we think about this Bible study, it would be reasonable to think that once Joseph was sold into slavery, his life was all downhill. But that didn't happen, because the Bible says in everywhere that Joseph went, the Lord was with Joseph. So this rejected child was now under God's watchful eye. Again, God didn't cause his brothers to hate him. God didn't cause his daddy to love him more than the other brothers. God allowed those things to happen to get him in a position for what's going to happen in his life. Now, Joseph could have been mad. He could have been bitter. He could have hated the world. But the Bible says that Joseph had the Lord on his side, that the Lord was with Joseph. And I'm going to say, I think that's the same thing with all of us as believers. No matter where we go or what we do, you need to understand that the Lord is with us. Not only with us, as in the case of Joseph, but as modern day New Testament believers of the Lord Jesus Christ who are filled with the Spirit of God. We could take our message one step further to say that not only the Lord is with us, but the Lord is in us. Joseph didn't have that part. He didn't have the Spirit of God living on the inside of him. And so if Joseph had strength to get through what he had to deal with, how much more strength do we have to get through the struggles we face when we have the Spirit of God living on the inside of us? Now, we have to choose to tap into the Spirit. We have to choose to draw strength from the Spirit. We have to choose to listen to the voice of the Spirit and not give up, cave in, and quit. But we've got the Spirit there that's available to guide us, to lead us to where we need to go and what we need to do. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man serving in the household of his Egyptian master, Potiphar. His master saw that the Lord was with him. So not only did Joseph have the Lord with him, it was evident that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made everything he did successful. That's found in Genesis 39, verses 2 through 3. So think about this for just a minute. Not only is God with Joseph, and Joseph can say internally, I know that God is with me, I know God's going to take care of me, God's yada, 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 right? But it was also evident to the people that was with him that this guy's different. God is with this guy. This guy has got something going on between him and God. He's special. He's different. Everything he does is successful. I think they would call it, in maybe a mythology, the Midas touch. Now, we know that he didn't have the Midas touch. He had the God touch, right? that he was tapped into God, and God was with him. Joseph worked for Potiphar, and he had a job to do. Joseph made such an impression on Potiphar that Potiphar turned his whole household over to Joseph. Now, Joseph could have sat over in the corner and whined and cried and fussed at, why am I in slavery? Why am I taken so far away from home? Why can't I get back to my father? Why's my daddy not looking for me? He could have went through all that, but he made the decision that here is where I am. I'm in this situation, and I will honor and serve God through this situation in which I face. And so I think about all of us, how we react to bad news, how we react to bad situations, how we react to, things on our job when we're getting piled on and piled on and piled on. It looks like nobody else is pulling their weight but us. And now I can tell you that I sometimes get caught up myself in the grumbling and complaining, but I have to remember that the Lord is with me. Matter of fact, I had something thrown in my lap the other day at work, and I'll be the first to say that what I'm doing, part of what we do where I work at is energy management, and we do that through building automation. And so basically we write programs and things for lights and air handlers and valves, and I think we monitor about 700,000 different points, just HVAC stuff and lighting and things like that. And so something was thrown on my lap for me to do that I, one, had never been trained to do, and two, had never saw in my life. And it was, to me, when I first saw it, it looked like very difficult programming. And so I lost heart for a minute. And I told my supervisor, I said, man, I am a maintenance guy who is talented enough to be able to help other maintenance people out in the field. I can tell them what I see on the screen that's broke, and I can help them go fix or give them an idea what to look for and how to fix it. I'm not a programmer, and I can't do this and all that. And I went home that night and I thought, you know what? That's not the attitude to have. The Bible says I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I went in the next day and I walked in his office, closed the door, and I said, I need to apologize because I didn't have the right attitude yesterday. My attitude was that I couldn't do it. That was my first reaction for some reason. And the more I think about this, the more I know that given some time and show me how to do this, that I can do whatever you're throwing my way. But I want to apologize because I don't want to be that person that has that attitude that, well, here you go again. You're just giving me something that I can't do. No, I want to be a person I'm trying to be a person that we say, you know what, God is with me. We'll give it a shot. We'll tackle it. And so evident that you're different than everybody else. When everybody whines that they're not getting or they're not getting a raise, or we're in economic times right now that are hard. Some people are right now are being laid off and things because we have a supply side problem. Since things shut down for COVID, factories are behind getting parts and all this type of stuff. And so we can look at things and say, well, everything's terrible, or we can just trust God in the middle of it. And I believe when we do that, we'll see His hand up on us, helping us be successful in every area of life. And so Joseph now, not only is he in prison, but not only has he been sold into slavery, but now at this point, he is at Potiphar's house, and Potiphar has turned over everything in his home for him to run. Why? Because he was successful. He was a Christian. God was honoring him. God was blessing him. Even as difficult as the circumstance, I don't know of any other thing that would be much harder than being sold into slavery. To be owned by somebody else, to be at somebody else's beck and call to do what they want you to do, when they want you to do it, how they want you to do it. And this is where he's at. But his attitude is one that everybody around him says, man, this dude's special. This dude is somebody else. If you walk with the Lord, He can do the same for you. The problem Now I want you to listen to this real close. The problem with the past is that it can become a dictator that rules today. You need to write that down somewhere. Remember that. The problem with the past is it becomes a dictator that rules you today. In other words, you're only able to accomplish what you can accomplish because of what you're looking at back yonder. They done me wrong. And you can't get past that. And you're that's your dictator. It rules you. So you never trust anybody again. You never take a leap of faith. You've been hurt in a marriage, in a relationship, so you think that all men are that way, or all women that are that way. You can't trust anymore. And so you're allowing a past experience dictate what happens to you in the future. And I found this to be true, is that, not everybody's bad. There are people that you'll deal with that are knuckleheads and will hurt your feelings and say things. But there's a lot of good folks out there. So we can't paint with a broad brush simply because we had a bad experience. We can't, think about it this way. You don't quit going out to restaurants to eat just because you had a bad experience at one particular restaurant, right? You don't say, well, I had bad service over here at Restaurant A, and so because Restaurant A provided bad service, every restaurant is going to treat me wrong. No, you go back the next time you're hungry and you got the money and you don't feel like cooking. You go back to another restaurant. You might not go back to Restaurant A, but you keep going back to restaurants. Same thing with life. Just because we get hurt somewhere along the line doesn't mean we quit. Now, you may need to remove yourself from certain situations, and people that you thought were your friends that hurt you, well, we probably don't need to hang around any longer. People who've talked about you behind your back doesn't mean everybody's doing it, but I might want to be careful about being around the ones that I know did and what I say to them. So you have to be wise in understanding, picking things, that we don't brush everything with a broad brush. And, I know people, and maybe some of you that are going to watch this are that way. You had a bad experience in church. Somebody done something to you. Somebody told you that you weren't good enough, or looked at you funny, or talked about you because you weren't dressed like everybody else, or maybe the preacher hurt your feelings, or there was a split in the church and you just couldn't believe Christian people acted that way. Well, don't paint it all with the same brush and think, well, that's just the way it is every church, so I'm never going back to church again. There's a lot of good churches with a lot of good people who are trying their best to be the light and salt of the world. You just happen to have an incident. It happens. I'm sad that it happens, but it does, because we're all human. We're all flesh and bone. We're all sinners who have fallen short of the glory of God. And when we gather together, there are going to be times, unfortunately, that we're going to disagree. We're going to say the wrong thing. There are going to be times that I put my foot in my mouth. Sometimes I'm going to stick both of them in there. So you look and say, well, this is just the way it is everywhere. No, it's not. And Joseph made that decision that, what? I think what Joseph probably come to grips with, and I think this is vital. I think Joseph probably come to grips with, I've been put in this hole and I've been taken to Egypt, and I'm under the control of a guy named Potiphar, and there ain't one thing I can do about it. I don't imagine he liked it, but I believe he probably surveyed his situation and said, you know what? Here I am. So I can do one or two things. I can either make this time, now that I'm sold into slavery, I can either make this time as miserable for me and everybody else, or I can take it and make the best of it. And Joseph decided that, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to show people that even in difficulty, God is still God. That God can still use you. That God can still work through you. And Potiphar was amazed that, man, this guy has got something. God is with him. And so he said, hey, here's my whole thing. My whole household. Have at it. You're in charge now. Because I know everything you do. That's how he says this. He saw that his master saw that the Lord was with him. Now look at the last part of Genesis 39 verse 3. And that the Lord made everything he did successful. So it opened up doors that nobody else was walking through. Again, the problem is with the past is it becomes a dictator that rules you today. So what do? How do we stop that? Well, we have to change dictators. We have to change dictators. Because the past is your past. The Bible says he cast as far as the east is from the west to never be remembered again. But he didn't say that he wiped it from your memory. And so everybody remembers the things that were done wrong, the things that were said, the person who didn't stop by, the person who wasn't there with you when you were going through the trial. We all remember that. I wish God would just wipe our minds of all that stuff so we didn't have to think about the past. But we can't let the past dictate to us how we live our future. We need to change dictators. We need to allow the Lord to rule our life today. You need to pray about it and say, God, you know what? I feel like I was done wrong. But you know what? I'm going to trust you that it was part of your plan to get me from point A to point B. I go back to tell you about, that I thought I was going to retire from Mount Sterling. And then, guy wouldn't help me get the children's ministry under control, and then it eventually ended up that the church made a decision to put the children's ministry on hold for the summer till we could get control of it. And this guy just got right down angry at me because, I said, look, I told you when it spilled out to the church, it was out of my hands. And, so it ended up where he got mad, come in one day, got up in my face and wanted to fight. And I was bitter when I left, but I've looked back on it now, and I realized something. In all my years of ministry, my wife has always known when it was time for us to leave a spot and do something else long before I did. She's always had that. When I went to Mount Sterling, she knew it a month before I did that God was preparing her, that we're getting ready to take this step in our lives. And that same year that went down, in January of that year, and I went back and thought about this after the emotions cooled down and everything of being riled up and, feel like I was being done wrong. Went back and thought, in January of that year, that was 2014, Pam had told me, we're not going to be here much longer. I said, what are you talking about? God's getting ready to move us. I said, come on, you're crazy. I'm going to retire from here because I've got a whole lot of stuff to do. I've got a lot of stuff to accomplish. I've got this plans and that plans. I want to do this and I want to do that. And, I want it to be the longest serving pastor in the history of the church. And I was only, I think 2 or 3 years away from that. And so there was a lot of stuff I wanted to accomplish. And she said, no, God is calling us away. And if I had to listen to that and listen to the voice of God and look sooner, I would have probably left under different circumstances. I wouldn't have gone through the hurt or the pain. I wouldn't have gone through that particular little problem. I would have been able to do it to transition out. So a lot of that was brought on by me being stubborn, me not listening to the voice of God, me having my own plan that I was going to do this and to heck with everything. This is what I think is going to happen. And so we have to be willing to let the Lord lead us to be the Lord of our life today and tomorrow, and not let the past keep us from who God is wanting us to be. 1 Samuel 2 verse 8 says, He raises the poor from dust and lifts the needy from trash heaps. He seats them with noblemen and gives them a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's, and He has set the world on them. I like what this says here at the beginning. He raises the poor. Now, not necessarily poor physically, but poor in spirit, downtrodden. He lifts them from the dust, and He lifts the needy. Calls it trash heaps, but He lifts the needies down from bad situations. And so the question, are you letting your past dictate your future? Or are you trusting God? Now that's one that is, I leave you tonight, that you're going to have to figure out. You're going to have to do some really soul searching and be really honest with yourself. Am I allowing the past to dictate my life? Give me a real quick example of that. Over the years, I've had people that come to church and they join the church, and they've come from other places, and they might have taught Sunday school or sang in the choir or taught a children's class, children's church, something like that. And somehow along the way, I give you one specific. Let me give you one more specific than that. I had a lady that joined one of my churches I pastored at one time, and we were starting with a choir, and I addressed this lady and said, "Hey, we're starting a choir. Won't you come join us? We could use some more female voices." And she just locked up and didn't say anything, and she never joined the choir. And so later, her husband pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, I just wanted to explain why she locked up, didn't say anything." He said the church that we came from, she wanted to sing in the choir, so she went and she tried out. And when she started singing with the choir, they stopped in front of everybody and told her, "You got to get out. You're terrible." I have never done that. We've always, no matter how you sound it, we've always encouraged you to keep on singing. Make a joyful noise to the Lord. But she had this experience where somebody said, "Get out, you're awful." And it affected her. Her psyche, her belief in herself, that she could ever sing again in a choir. And so when approached about it later on down the line, she drew back from her past experience, and it dictated her future because she wouldn't sing in the church choir. Why? Because somebody had said something that, hurt her feelings. So are you letting your past dictate your future? Or are you trusting God? It's a good thought. And all of us need to think about that. So maybe you're here today and you've been going to a church that is not yours, but you've been thinking about joining it. Or past experience keeping you from moving forward with the brothers and sisters that are hungry for God, that are moving in a direction, that are wanting to be closer to God, and you feel God pulling you towards that, but you're afraid to pull that trigger to make that move. I would ask you, what's dictating your future? The past? Thing that's holding you back? Or are you letting go and letting God have His way? You say, well, this is something that we've been at this other place 30, 40 years. Hey, just because you've been somewhere that long doesn't mean that God is going to keep you there. To grow you and to take you to another level, sometimes God has to shake things up sometimes to get us out of our comfort zone and to get us to a place where we're trusting Him again, where we're not just going through the motions. And so this week, before I come to you Wednesday, I want you to think about that for just a minute. Am I trusting God for the future, or I'm letting the past dictate where we go from here? Now, next week, Wednesday, we're going to talk about making up for lost years, and we'll talk about we'll talk about Jacob a little bit more and the things that how he dealt with the past and the situation that was played into his hands. Here's a young man that's been dealt a bad hand, but we learn from Joseph of how he plays it. Every time he has a setback, he always is set up for a comeback. Listen to that. Every time he has a setback, God is setting him up for a comeback. Just when they think Joseph is done and over with, God will work in that circumstance to bring him back to the forefront. And ultimately, God is getting him ready for the salvation, the physical salvation, when there's a hunger and there's a famine. Because of what Joseph done, the nation of Israel survived, and so did Egypt. And so you might not see God in your current circumstance, but God could be setting you up for a big, brighter thing than you could ever have imagined. And sometimes you get there through the failures of life and the pains and the things that hurt us and the things that we come across. And you remember what Joseph said to his family when they come back to Egypt, and he's the prime minister of Egypt. He told his brothers, he said, what you meant for evil, God used for good. I never enjoyed the bad things that happened, but I can honestly tell you that in every bad thing, ministry-wise, that's happened, what men meant for evil, God has turned out for my good. And He'll do the same for you. Our job is to trust Him. Let go of the past, reach to the future, and to what God's got for us. And God will move in ways we can't even begin to think or imagine. I love you. Everybody have a great week. Think on those things. Let God move you to the place that He's wanting to move you so that you can be the person that He wants you to be. I love you. Have a great week. God bless.